Hi, it's Jill Foster here with Shimmerz Paints, and today I'll be creating a pink poppy card, and I'll be layering Shimmerz Creameez and Coloringz mediums, also using a large scale stamp. And here's a look at the card that I'll be making today. And I left this blank without a sentiment on the front, so it could be used for any occasion just by stamping whatever sentiment is needed onto the inside of the card. I'm using the Shimmerz Coloringz, which is a flat, extremely colorful, water-based sprayable medium, and also the Creameez watercolor paints. They have a touch of shimmer and leave a beautiful satin finish. I'm also using the following penny black stamps, and I will have a list of all the supplies used, exact colors, and exact product names on the stamps at the end of the video. So to begin, I'm activating the Creameez paints, and I'm just adding a few drops of water into each pot of color. And then I'll just let that sit for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then I can immediately stir those up, and you can see the beautiful creamy paint that is there, and it has just this beautiful satin finish. I'm working on Canson 140 pound watercolor paper. I'm going to lightly spritz my paper to begin. I'm also spritzing underneath that, and it helps it to lay flat as I'm painting on it. So I'm going to begin by adding the paints, and I'm just painting them on. Now the surface is already wet, so that helps them really blend and bleed into each other. And I'm painting sort of a rough, loose interpretation of a sky, moving down into the green grass. Since I'll be stamping a flower on top, I just wanted this to have sort of a landscape background. And again, like I said, I have all of the exact colors used at the end of the video. I just keep layering the color. Now I will dry this with my heat gun, and I really let those puddles and drips work their way on the page. I like that textural background for this particular card. I'm also taking these paints and putting them onto my acrylic block, and with my dry background I'm going to just press them into the paint colors, and that gives even more texture to the background. If you want them to move a little bit more, you can just slightly mist them with water. And then I'll dry that with my heat gun again, and I'm just going back in and adding a touch more color. This is the Just Peachy, and I'm just trying to warm up that background a little bit. I like to start with my colors pretty light and then go back and add more intensity as I go. And I'm just kind of patting that color onto the background too. So I can swipe the brush across, or I can also pat it. Now I'm going to take the coloring spray, and I'm just rolling them between my hands to get them ready to use. And with that still wet background, I'll be spraying the No Yoking color, again just to really brighten things up. And I love using these two mediums, the Creameez and the Coloringz, separately, but when they're layered together, they really add a lot of depth to the background, and it's just fun to combine them and see how they mix together. Once that background is dry, I'm ready to add just a little bit of subtle stamping to the background. So I've got this stamp by Penny Black called Footnotes, and then I'm inking that up with VersaFine ink. And I'm just going to stamp that, and I don't want it to stamp perfectly, so I'm just quickly pressing it a little bit at the top and then moving down along the left-hand side. Now I'm ready to work on the flower, so I'm inking that up and I'm stamping it onto watercolor paper. And I want to make sure that I have the flower and then at least the two buds as well. So you'll see I'll just get that second one over here on the top. But I'm cutting that out so it doesn't matter which direction things are facing. I'm also going to stamp this again onto the background. I love this large scale Penny Black stamp for these mixed media type cards. It gives a lot of room to do the painting on the flower, and it also is really dynamic on a bold background. So I'll set that aside while I go ahead and add color to my flower, and I'm starting off with the Creameez paints, and again just activating them with water. Let them sit for about 30 seconds, and then I'm ready to stir them up. I'm starting with my lightest color, and I'm painting that over the entire flower. Then I'll add the medium color. And then finally I will add the darkest color. And here I'm just kind of patting that on top and letting it blend with that lightest color. Now for a darker color with the Creameez, I found if I add less water into the pot to activate it, then I'll get a little bit darker color. And if I want it to be more transparent and lighter, I just add more water into the pot. And I just keep going back and really playing with it and letting them blend together as I go. And then as I apply the heat, I can sort of move the color around and get some puddles and some drippage effects. If you wanted it to dry more evenly, I would just let it air dry on its own. And then I'll just show you here just a little bit of the shimmer. It's so gorgeous in real life. It's difficult to capture on camera. Now I'm going to add even more color with the coloring sprays. And I'm using the color Pink Stiletto here, which might be one of my favorite colors in the Coloringz. And I'm just going to spritz that, and I've used a paper towel to mask off the top. But I will go back here with just a little bit of water to blend that out so there isn't this stark line where the paper towel was. But it did protect the very tips from getting that darker paint on it. And then I'm going back in with the Creameez. So again, I'm going back and forth and blending the Creameez paints along with the coloring sprays. And here again, I'm taking that Pink Stiletto's color, I'm spraying it on my acrylic block, and now I can just paint this on. So I can have a little more precision than if I was spraying it directly onto the image. And then I did dry this before going back in and layering on more color. I'm also going to use the My Bleeding Heart coloring spray. The combination of this with that Pink Stiletto, it gets this really great sort of bubblegum pink color. It's very eye-catching, and I love combining those two together. They're a great pair. And you can see I just keep working this and having fun painting until I'm totally happy with the result. It's very forgiving. If you get it too much in one area like I did there over on the left, you can just take a fairly dry brush and just swipe it right off, or you could use a paper towel too. So once I was happy with that, and I also painted those little buds, I went ahead and cut them out, and then I'm going to glue them onto my background. So this way I could work on the background without worrying about the stamped image, and then cut it out, but I didn't have to cut the stems. I don't like fussy cutting very much, so I kind of kept it simple and cutting out just the buds and the top of the flower. So I'll glue those on, and I'll make sure it's completely dry before going on to this next step. I wanted to add a little bit of a shadow around the image, so I'm using the Thunderstorm Creameez, which is a really great color for adding a shadow. And I paint it right out of the pot onto around the flower image. Then I go back in with just water to blend it out as it moves out away from the flower where I want that shadow. And I'll continue to do this around the flower and the stems and a little bit on the buds. This also gives like a really nice grungy effect to the background as well. I'm also using the coloring spray Don't Be Swayed. This is a great color too if you want to get a little bit of grunge and also some shadowing. I've sprayed that onto my acrylic block so I can paint it on. Again, just gives me a little more precision, but I can still have that great color. I'm also adding a few splatters with it. And then this is the Keep Palm Coloringz. And I wanted to darken up just the very base. So I'm using that down in this corner. And I'll paint the stems with that too. I stamped a couple of butterflies, and I really want them to recede into the background. So once that was dry, I sprayed it again with the Keep Palm coloring spray. And then I'll pat that with a baby wipe just to help blend it down. And that's it. To finish off the card, I've mounted it to a white note card using dimensional adhesive. And then any sentiment could be stamped on the inside. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, if you place an order with Shimmerz, be sure to mention my name in the Notes to Merchant section for free paint. And this also lets us know that you enjoyed today's video and want to see more. And here's a list of all the supplies used in the creation of today's card.